Alright, so, anyways, I wanted to talk a little bit about future-based sound design today. Honestly, quite simple after you learn how to do it and know what you're doing. First, let me start off by explaining what's going on here. First, we have our kick sample. Yeah, we're punchy, like a long kick sample, because it's more of a drive, because it lowers everything inside a little bit longer, and makes it just blend everything together, off. Next, we have our snare. All that's going on right here is I'm taking the two snare samples and putting them together to make it more of a build-up snare into a longer reverb. See? All this does is it blends both of them together. Then we have the hi-hat sample. Always use something that's more, I don't know how to explain it other than orchestral. I cannot say that word. But anyways, what I use is I actually use the snare sample and I shortened it to make it more of a hi-hat. Now anyways, let's arrange the beat. First, I find that Future Bass always has a kick pattern like this. It has a kick right here, kick on the whatever, the fourth, and then it has a kick on the second. And always, I find that hi-hats go in a 1/8 pattern, and snares always go on the middle of each bar. So the third, it seems. See? Now you've got your Future Bass beat arranged. So this is a 2-bar loop. We'll make this into a 4-bar loop, but for the other 2 bars, we have to rearrange it a little bit to make it a little bit more different. So first, what I like to always do is whenever we get to the a 4-bar arrangement, I like to, on the first 2 bars, I like to add a roll. Just to enter a new bar, just to enter the next section. See? It rolls it along a little bit. Anyways, for the other 2 bars, I like to add a kick before the snare, just to give a little bit of difference. And for over here, I like to make it more of a drum and bass offbeat snare. Seems I'm off timing a little bit. I did not mean to click that. Make it a little bit more punchy. There we go. See, something like that. And now time for the perk samples and the crashes. You can also put rides in, but for rides, I put them every fourth, just because it keeps the 4 to the floor beat going a little bit. That way it just keeps everything going smoothly. Anyways, for perk samples, you can always use a perk loop. I do recommend using those. They are very easy to use. You just have to blend them together with everything else. Like you could use this one. This one's perfect for Future Bass. But anyways, I like one-shots because I like to be able to arrange it myself. And always put perk samples where there's spaces. Like see, there's a space right here. There's no kick or snare playing. So you'd put a perk sample right here. Perk sample right here. Perk sample right here. A perk sample right here. See, okay, this one, I would set it off timing just a little bit of syncopation. It makes it a little bit more different. I find that syncopation is very much used in Future Bass. It definitely adds texture to your beats. I know that sounds weird, but what we'll do is we'll actually add this. We'll add another sample and we'll do a we'll reverse it and make it go into itself and add just a slight amount of reverb. Oh my god, I can't speak. Oh, that sounds good. See, something like that. Just a simple perk loop is perfectly fine. And now what we need to do is we need to master the sounds just to make sure that the beat blends together nicely. I personally do not like to use these, even though we can, because whenever I use auxiliary, even though I can press pre, I like to use my auxiliary into these, and pressing pre can screw up if I do need this little bit of control. So we'll go to the sample, too loud, put to about, there you go. I find that from a range from -10 decibels to -5 usually is perfect, though it might depend on how loud your sample is. This sample is already perfectly fine. As you can see, I put it to -8 though, just to keep it a little bit quieter, because we don't want the hi-hat overwhelming everything. As you can see for my snare, I did not lower the volume. Snares in Future Bass are supposed to be loud and they're supposed to cut through the mix. And same for the kick, always needs to cut through the mix. And now what we're going to work on is we're going to go grab our crash. I like to honestly just go onto the sample library and type in Future Bass crash. It may sound chopped and weird, but it's fine because it honestly does not matter. It can add a little bit of texture. And for crashes, you can change how loud it is, but I like to keep it a little bit louder just to let you know that it's a new section starting. Oh, and I forgot to explain this. This is just a soft clipper, or limiter I should say. All it really does is it's on a -2 decibel threshold with a 50 ratio. No attack and 120, 256 release with a really wide knee, so that way it slowly trims everything just to keep it quieter. As you can see, it works perfectly well, and it doesn't do that compression thing where it makes certain sounds louder. And now into the synthesizer sound design. Normally, I would say it's hard, especially on Audio Tool, because the saws are, I don't know if they're render weird or something, but they do not sound how I believe they should, especially compared to Vital, which I use on almost every DAW I use. That is not a saw. I forget this starts out in a sine wave. As you can see, it sounds ever so slightly different, and I don't know how to explain it. But anyways, for saws, detune them to about 15 cents and make them wide. As you can see, it may sound weird, but you're gonna have to trust me on this one. Now for the LFO, trust me, you're gonna want a downward saw and make this into a 1/8. Now, you can do two things here. You can set it to the saw wave, or you can set it to the filter. I'm going to do both. And always put 100%. It sounds alright, right? But now what you can do is, if you don't like the filter, you can set it up a little bit different. Personally, I think that sounds alright. Now for this, always make sure to have it at full level. And now add more saw waves. Make sure there's some of these distorted saw waves, just by a little bit. You don't need anything crazy. You don't need any of these ones. You don't need any of all these ones down here. Just pick from these ones. It'll be perfectly fine. I find this one has good harmonics. Perfectly fine by me. And then we'll add one more saw wave just a regular saw wave, and put it at a 0.5 ratio, which will automatically put it to minus 12 semitones, which is an entire bar lower than everything else. And by the way, do put a little bit of glide on here. You're going to want that. And get rid of the release time on the saws. Now that's your saw pad. Sounds all right to me. And now here's what really helps everything, especially on Audio Tool. Go over to your presets and type in OTT and take the client OTT. It works perfectly. It adds all the harmonics back and it gives the saw wave a little bit of depth. You're going to need to trust me on this one. See, it just adds everything back a little bit and it makes it a little bit more of a diverse sound. Now for myself, I do add an extra compressor every single time, mainly because I like to control my sounds and I'm very picky about how I want my saws. I have a very distinct taste when it comes to saws. I do not like constant saws. I do not like screeching. I like heavier mid saw. As you can see, there's too much mid in here, but the ratio up to 50, spread the band, and I'm going to get rid of the attack on this, and put this up to about 100. Okay, now I think that there's some harmonics spilling in to over here, so I'm going to widen the band and put up the ratio. You don't have to do this with everything, but I do recommend it myself. Okay, that sounds all right to me. Now, just for a little bit of extra depth, you could add a chorus, but I myself like to add a detune because it just makes the saw waves a little bit more detuned, I guess. There's no other way to explain it than detuned. See? Put the delay up to 16 milliseconds about, and put this tune to about, I think 5 to 15. Sounds about good. And by the way, keep your BPM usually a little bit higher, from 140 to 170, I think. 170 is kind of too fast, but you can get away with it. And now time to just plan out some simple chords. We'll just use D minor because that's what I usually work in. Make it a 4-bar loop. And now for future bass chords, you can do one every single bar, or you can do what I like to do, which is do this, and then we put another transitional chord into the next one. See, sounds funky, but it's alright. Now just copy your chord progression over. And now time for something that I like to include, but not everyone does. A gated pad. It's basically the same thing as your saws, but instead with a triangle wave. Just a singular triangle wave, no unisound, no, just a triangle wave with a filter that gets LFO. Make sure to set this to 1/8. Though you could use technically whatever you wanted, but I find that it's usually one of those two. Now for your gated pad, all you really need to do is just run through the same chord progression, but you could revert it to triads. As you can see, it just adds that little bit of extra texture that is needed in here just to move everything through. You can see here though, there's a lot of load. I'm gonna cut the sub bass from it, keep the band on 3 decibels, add the ratio up to 50, and cut it to about 32 decibels, I believe it is. Of course, my audio cuts out on me right now. Why wouldn't it? Anyways, that should get rid of the sub bass stuff that will reflect with our bass that we make. I'm gonna make 2 types of basses for you guys to see the process of both the sub bass and the saw bass. First, we're gonna make the saw bass because I'm a little bit more comfortable with making saw basses because I usually use a lot of saw basses. Now, as you can see, we have our filter here, as we've used before. We're going to drag it to somewhere around whatever this area is, just to make everything a little bit more in the bass. Grab your saw wave. Now this is a very easy area to make a respace if you want to. Turn your Unisound up to 2 or to 4. 3 will not work for a respace. And then for a respace, turn the detune up to about 20 and turn the spread a little bit down. And it will play in the 2nd octave. As you can see, it's a respace. Now, depending on your filter, you can give a unique sound and you can play with the detune a little bit yourself. But that's not what I'm going to do because I'm not making a respace. I am making a saw bass. As you can see, it is very aggressive on the ear. Now, to tone that down a bit, I will throw in a square. Turn it up, but don't make it super loud. Turn your filter to 36 decibels. And boom, now you've got a saw bass. Now, depending on what you want, you can change the saw sample yourself. It really does not matter what sample you use. There's a bunch of different samples that you can use for more aggressive sounds. And now, as I do with everything else, compression is a very important part of music. You need to compress everything so that way it fits in with the track. There's some situations where you don't need to compress things, but I do recommend compressing things just because it makes it fit into the track and blends in with the mix a little bit. See, this is a sub bass. It does not go into any of the bass notes or the bass frequencies. It stays in the sub bass. Now you see how it wiggles a little bit. We need to fix that because sub basses should not wiggle. Do you know what causes this? The frequency between the saw wave and the square. Now what we do this to fix that is to lower the sound a little bit. And now as you can see, this is a little bit more stable. Ignore this, Audio Tool is weird and it always has this, even on the most stable sub basses. Watch. See, it's perfectly stable, as you can see by it in here, but Audio Tool renders that weird. Because all you really want to look at is this to know if it's stable. As you can see, it's stable. We'll use that. And also, I'm going to put up the cutoff frequency a little bit, just to give it a little bit more texture. And now, what I always do is I always put on a tube, just because that little bit of distortion, or whatever how much you want, can affect things perfectly to give you that perfect bass sound you want. I want that. And now for everyone's favorite yet least favorite thing, sidechain. And then we have our sidechain. For some reason, I find that the bass preset is actually kind of nice and it ducks perfectly fine. Now, one thing I always recommend is if you want the bass to play with the wubs, it's perfectly fine and it actually adds sound to it. Makes it a little bit more of a better texture. So what you do to do that, LFO, automate the waves turning on and off. 1/8 downward saw. As you can see, works perfectly fine. And it adds a little bit of texture. This is the most basic sound design tutorial, wub, gated pad, bass. Now we'll go over a sub bass. Sub bass, just pick any simplified wave that you want. I'm going with a square because I have a really fat sub bass. Put it on 40 decibels filter and put it almost all the way closed. Like that. Make sure to turn it up. And your sub bass. That's literally all you have to do. And then you can play that. I'm going to use my sub bass because I like that. I already know how the sub bass sounds. I promise you it will sound as a perfect sub bass. Always works. And now time for our lead. For a lead, in the future bass, you usually use either a saw wave or a square wave, but those are just casual leads. Everyone uses them. For a lead, take whatever square or saw wave that you want. I'm taking these ones. Just like that. Now for leads in future bass, they're really, really glidey. So make sure to keep this on mono. Get rid of the release. Turn up the glide. Something like that is perfectly fine. Next thing we can do is either we can spread the signal, make it wide, or what we can do is add reverb. Some people do add delay because it just adds that little extra sound. I usually add reverb. You can always make some delay if you want. I do recommend experimenting, but I always myself make some reverb. Turn the wet signal down quite a bit. Now normally most people would use this as an auxiliary. I say no. Turn up vibrato. Turn on the diffuse tank. Turn up the high pass. Down the low pass. Sorry to leave you guys hanging, but my little brother interrupted me and told me that supper is almost ready. So, anyways, to explain, this is the lead. Something very simple. Basically, all it really was is just an upward arc going downward. That's literally all it is. See upward arc, send it down. Then for the last, always change everything up, just to make it sound like it's ending. Holy audio tool lag. That's all you need to know for simple future bass. After this, build off of your sounds, add diversity, change up chord progressions, and add effects. That's all you really need to do. That's literally just the simplistics of future bass. If you really want to, you can add vocals. I think I might have a D minor vocal saved. Oh my god. No idea though. I put in D minor. I know I have a D minor. Oh, it's because I have one shot. Yeah, my bad. know I have vocals. See? Personally, even though it's D sharp minor, but I do not believe I could transpose it in Audio Tool, so I guess that kind of sucks. Oh, here, ARP loop. Actually, never mind, shouldn't use this. Anyways, you get the idea. That's all. Simple future-based design. That's all you need to know.